Every ounce of muscle you gain should be making you stronger. I'm Kaizzad Capadia, and this is the Neulife Masterclass of Muscle.
It's important for the proponents of actual strength training and power training to look good. Like you have Mike O'Hearn, who's a model, a bodybuilder, and a guy who strength trains really well.
In fact, people who don't know Mike O'Hearn, I'd like you all to Google him up to see his pictures. Well, the guy is capable of deadlifting huge loads, 700 pounds plus. Now, normally the guys who are concentrating on lifting those kind of loads are known to be with big tummies or known to be people who are not really aesthetic. And that's what people think, there's some kind of a trade-off between aesthetics and true genuine strength training for strength performance. Well, here's a guy who will disprove them. And in fact, we all can disprove them. Now, there are examples of people who are into strength training, the right kind of strength training, but they don't look after their diets. They just keep on making their central nervous systems more and more efficient. Their technique improves, and they tend to lift a lot of weight, but at the same time there's no hypertrophy of muscle, and that's not because of the kind of exercises that they're doing, or the kind of lifts that they're doing, or the kind of repetitions that they're doing it for.
The diet.
It's because of the diet. So I would advise everybody who genuinely strength trains the right way, the way that we are propagating, to have some responsibility towards this and not misrepresent this kind of training by a badly non-hypertrophied body.
Nutrition are the bricks. Without the bricks, the muscle is
Correct.
not going to build.
And in fact, the heavier you lift, the more the need for nutrition.
Better nutrition.
And all these people who are not paying attention to nutrition and just getting more and more efficient at lifting weights without the hypertrophy coming in. Now here is me talking about hypertrophy and how important hypertrophy is. I never actually said hypertrophy was not important.
Hypertrophy is the growth of the muscle.
Growth of the muscle, correct. So you learn how to lift heavier and heavier, learn how to lift with your existing musculature, take it to its maximum with the correct form and technique. Obviously going to cause breakdown. Obviously the body will want to supercompensate and build more muscle. That will turn into a reality only if you're having the right kind of nutrition, the right quantum of protein. And if you don't do that, the body can get so efficient at lifting loads that it can lift loads that can actually destroy itself. And all these people who are not paying attention to nutrition or not really leading a bodybuilder's lifestyle diet-wise, but concentrating on lifting a lot of weight and learning the technique better and better, they're in for a downfall. They are going to get too strong for their bodies. Martial artists.
Yeah. I've been training for 3 years.
You've been training in martial arts.
Yeah.
There are so many martial artists who know how to kick correctly, who know how to punch correctly. At the same time, do not pay any attention to hypertrophy. With their incredible technique, form and technique, in punching and kicking, if you add muscle to it, the impact would be so much
Stronger.
Greater. But hypertrophy, as I said, can happen even with bad technique. And that's another side of the coin. Bad technique and hypertrophy means a lot of muscle that you're actually being unused.
You're not using that muscle. You're not making the
And
most of
strength performance actually is way lower than what the musculature can give the potential for.
It's like having a bigger engine that doesn't fire right.
It doesn't fire right. Perfect. A very good example actually. A bigger engine that doesn't fire right or is misfiring.
It's having the same amount of petrol but wasting
So,
it, not giving you the
form and technique allows you to use your existing musculature to its maximum potential. And then afterwards, as you reach that maximum potential, if you want more performance, better performance, then you're to hypertrophy. So learn how to train correctly, and that's what this program is about. Maybe we'll have another series about how to eat correctly, how to follow the bodybuilding lifestyle, so to speak, as far as nutrition is concerned. Okay, now let's get down to today's episode, which is the deadlift, which is the actual form and technique. Okay, so I told you last time for the squat, what did I do? I started off with the setup. So setup is crucial. Okay, now one thing that I want you all to know about lifting an object from the floor, whatever it might be, never try and lift from away from the bar. Okay, so either completely walk up to the bar. The first thing about a deadlift setup is when you look down, the bar should be over your midfoot. Your foot, you cut it into half, that's exactly where the bar should be. Right? So that's the first thing about the setup. Secondly, about the stance. Your stance is definitely not going to be as wide as a squat. So it's going to be about shoulder width. Squat stance, for most people, as I said, is slightly wider than shoulder width. Stance means the distance between your heels. Since this is a shoulder width stance, the toes will not be pointed outwards.
Pointed straight forward.
They'll be pointed straight forward. And the bar will be extremely close to your shins.
Almost touching your shin.
Yeah. Okay?
The closer you are to the weight, the better.
Come. Now I'll have Clinton here so that I can explain the setup. So here you see that he's walked up to the bar. From the top, if Clinton looks at the bar is cutting his midfoot. Toes are pointed straight forward. Second part of the setup, simply bend over to hold the bar. So it's simply bending over to hold the bar. This is the time that you get your grip. Now one thing, let me talk about the grip. We spoke about welding when we spoke about the squat. Clinton, we'll have you get back to that position again. So we spoke about the welding part, where the bar literally has to be welded into your body, part of your body, not an object that you're lifting. This welding has to happen at this point of contact with holding the bar. You don't just hold the bar, you hold the bar and you crush it. Everything you've got. Literally, your intention should be to crush. Obviously, the bar's not going to get crushed. Obviously, nobody's strong enough to crush iron. But the point is that the intent has to be to crush the bar. So that's how tight it's going to be. If the intent is to crush the bar, how tight is the grip going to be? As tight as humanly possible for you. So that's the first thing you do. Many people hold the bar loose and then they lift off and start tightening the grip. That's too late.
Too late.
If you want that bar to stay in your hands properly,
already.
You first grip it and squeeze the damn bar. Okay? So first step.
And that applies for all movements.
Yeah, so set up. First step, walk up to the bar. From the top, the bar should cut your foot into half. The stance will be shoulder width. Just simply bend over. There's nothing else I can say. I'm just cueing you into just bending over. It's not some technique. I don't want you to hinge the hip or whatever. Just bend over naturally to reach the bar. Get the hands on the bar with the alternate grip, one prone and one supine. Okay? Now, understand this. Supination. Okay? Now, there is the humerus out here at what is called as the glenohumeral joint, the shoulder joint, the ball socket joint. Then there's the elbow. After the elbow, there are two bones out here.
Radius and the ulna.
The radius and the ulna. Okay? The radius actually rotates around the ulna. It turns around the ulna. Okay? The radius is the thumb side. The ulna is the little finger side. Okay? So the radius actually rotates around the ulna to turn your hand. So this turning happens at the radio-ulnar joint out here, below the elbow. But your entire arm from here also can rotate. So this is called as external rotation at the shoulder, whereas this is called supination happening at the radio-ulnar joint. Okay? Now you need complete symmetry here at the shoulder girdle when you're lifting. It's a dead movement. One palm supinated, one palm pronated. But where is this supination going to happen? At the radio-ulnar.
Only at the radio-ulnar.
Not at the shoulder. Now many people find it uncomfortable on one side to go supine. Why? Because the radio-ulnar joint is not that mobile. So what will happen is, even in my own case, I'm quite restricted in my supination due to an accident I had a long time back as a child. So the point is that I can only rotate till here. So if I really wanted to meet the bar, then there's some amount of external rotation that needs to happen
at the shoulder.
At the shoulder joint, right? Now this is what causes discomfort. Scapulae also get misaligned, and you can sometimes see a person askew as he lifts the bar. Now this is not something that's going to be bilaterally symmetrical. So the point is, if he's not mobile here, then probably a good idea would be to supinate
Which hand?
The other hand and keep this pronated. And many a times when you make that switch, you suddenly find the person having a straight spine, which is earlier slightly askew. So you'll need to check with your client or yourself, for that matter, which hand you're more comfortable in.
That happens with me too. I can't move this hand all the way around.
So you'll be relatively uncomfortable on one side than the other. So choose the side that is the most comfortable to supinate. Many people talk about alternating grips on every rep or doing one set with this and one set with that. I would rather that you stick to the most comfortable. Okay, there's no need to do that because there's complete symmetry out here. You're lifting with the torso and there's complete symmetry out here. There's asymmetry out here, but here there is no movement at the elbow joint, hence the asymmetry is not going to cause any kind of a problem in the lift. Okay? Right. And there are some people who will be completely mobile at radial ulnar joints. It won't matter whether the left is supinated or the right is supinated. Now the grip also has to be nicely wide. There should be no clash of hands and legs.
It has to be out of the knee.
So if it's shoulder width, your grip has to be nicely wider than shoulder width. Okay? Yeah, that's right. So keep it nicely wide, clear of your knees. Now you grip the bar tight. This is where you get into setup. Now, no, you just bend down to pick up the bar. You just grab the bar, bend down to grab the bar. See, there's a rounding of the back. He's got a firm hold on the bar now. He's tightened the grip, and now he's going to get up into the launch position. So for that, he will straighten his spine out. Okay? If I look from the side, Clinton, raise your hips slightly. That's exactly the point of the launch. Now at this point, you see the knee is not jutting out from the hands. Drop your hips down. More, more, more. This is where Clinton is actually squatting with the bar in his hands. Okay? I still remember that many people in many magazines, and popular magazines, people used to talk about the deadlift to be a squat done with the bar in your hands instead of the bar behind. That has caused all kinds of problems with form and technique. The joints involved in the squat and the deadlift, okay, are the same. Like for instance, whenever you stand up from a sitting position, you're doing double extension. There is extension at the knee and extension at the hip. When you're picking up an object also, you're doing double extension at the knee and the hip. Now, when you squat, on the eccentric, the knee flexion is a lot more than the hip flexion. Okay, so, but both happen simultaneously. So let's say for every degree of rotation of the hip, there are 2 degrees rotating at the knee. So you end up with a lot of knee flexion in the squat, with a slight hip flexion. That's the squat. In the deadlift, the hip flexion has to be a lot and the knee flexion has to be less. So for every 2 degrees of the hip flexion, there is 1 degree of knee flexion. So that's the difference between the squat and the deadlift. Joint actions are the same. Double flexion on the eccentric, double extension on the concentric. Those are the common factors. But the hip flexion is a lot more than knee flexion in the deadlift. Knee flexion is a lot more than hip flexion in the squat on the eccentric. And obviously that proportionate amount of extension on the concentric. Okay, so you're bending down again. And straighten the spine, straighten the spine. That's right. Again, the knee is jutting out from ahead. That should not happen. The knee should be behind or in line with the hands. That's when you know that the hip flexion is more and the knee flexion is correct. Okay, if he drops the hip down any further, the knee will jut out from the front. Do you see the knee jutting out from the front? And that signifies that he's squatting. He's not in the deadlift position. So the moment the knee comes in line with the hands, okay, all these muscles are tight and rigid, complete rigidity. And now the mental cue that I will give this person to keep in mind is, since the bar is welded to his hands, it's part of his hands, is stand up. That's exactly it. Standing up with the weight.
Just stand up.
Stand up. Now on the way down, people always feel that the knee is going to come in the way and they tend to go forward. The way to drop the weight down, the weight will move completely straight. So the hip will move back, the knee will not hinge forward, and the bar will move down in a straight line. That's the most efficient way to keep the weight down.
Put the bar down.
With the minimal amount of stress on your lumbar. People are always concerned about my lower back, my lower back, my lower back. You use correct biomechanics, your lumbar is bloody strong, nothing's going to happen to it. Try and sort of go down straight awkwardly the way you're not supposed to go down, the way you would not put an object down on the floor. That's when you screw up your back. So from here, simply push the hip back and drop down straight, with the bar traveling down straight. The knee does not hinge forward. The knee stays in place, the femur goes behind as the hip gets pushed back and the bar comes down straight, right over subtendon.
Lots of people who avoid doing the deadlift because they think that it will damage the back, or they already have back problems or backache, so they do not do the deadlift. What is it a myth or is it for real?
Obviously it's a myth. The point is that, are you going to stop picking up objects from the floor? And yes, there are many people who want to vegetate that way. But that's not how a fitness professional thinks. That's not how people leading the fitness lifestyle should think.
The stronger you train it, the stronger it gets.
See, it's like this, lumbar health. do not pick up heavy objects from the floor. If it's something light, squat down and pick up. Don't bend at the waist. If you want to get out of bed, turn on your side and get up. This is the way a sick person behaves. When you tell a healthy person to behave like this, like a sick person, this is what they talk about back health. You're not keeping your back healthy. There may not be misuse, but something worse is happening. Disuse.
Disuse.
100 times worse.
The muscles will get used to being that lazy.
Disused, not utilized at all. And non-utilization leads to wastage, muscle wastage.
Atrophy.
Atrophy. And not just atrophy that is part and parcel of the aging process. I'm talking about accelerated atrophy. No matter what we do, at some point or the other, I mean, I'd be a fool to say that even at 90 years old, I'm going to be as hypertrophied. Okay, but I will be way more hypertrophied than any other 90-year-old if I live till that age. Way more hypertrophied, because I will lead the bodybuilding lifestyle. I will retard degeneration to the largest possible extent. But I accelerate degeneration, age-related degeneration, if I do not utilize my muscle at all.